Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. All right, guys, this is the third video today, and I have saved one of the best for last. We are going to have an interview conversation with Curtis from VSO Gun Channel. Now, why we're bringing him on is because he has specific knowledge on something that we're following. UPS is now sending requests to FFLs for their FFL documentation, keeping it on file, and a lot of other things that seem outside the norm, which causes me and Curtis to say, is the Biden administration doing their dirty work through a shipper like UPS? That's what we're going to discuss. I cannot wait to hear what you guys think of not only this content, but this topic and format. Let me know what you guys think in the comments field below. I'll say a quick word from our sponsor, STI, who made this possible, and then we're going to get into it. Now, I know a lot of you out there like to repair and modify your own guns. If you're looking for a way to take your hobby to the next level, Sonoran Desert Institute can help. The online programs at STI cover armor courses, gunsmithing, ballistics, woodworking and finishes, shooting, sports management, and more. Plus, all the tools and materials are shipped directly to your door. There's never been a better time to get into a career you can actually enjoy and use the materials, so what are you waiting for? There's a link in the description box below, and thank you so much to STI for bringing you this interview conversation. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, guys, we're trying something new. We're bringing on other personalities, other amazing YouTube channels to get their perspective on things that are going down in the Second Amendment. Now, this is important because this is something that Curtis, who you are seeing right on the screen right now from VSO Gun Channel, he is an amazing YouTuber. He has all the scientific facts. If you were ever looking for something, what does that part actually do? That is the guy to go and see. But the reason that we're connecting here today is we've got something in common. We ran across something that's occurring at UPS. Now, this is incredibly important, and I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory before we get into it. But before I jump into that, Curtis, you want to say hello? Anything you want to throw out there? Embarrass me in public? Anything?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on. No, I think we'll keep the embarrassing stories towards the end. That way it's easier for you to edit.
Yeah, that's smart. That's wise. So for you guys who don't know, Curtis and I are those friends who like, what happened to them? Did they end up in this? Yeah, they ended up there. How'd they do that? Don't worry about it. We have that vibe, and it is a great time. So I'm sure you guys are going to enjoy this show.
I think we said that if we had to be incarcerated, cellmates.
For sure. That is true. Curtis is my guy. If he rolls up in a car and he says, get in, don't ask any questions, we are off, and I will see you in a week. But that's a different story for a different time. We are going to talk about UPS today because I got a little bit of a hint or a drop from one of the viewers of this channel. And they said, hey, UPS is sending me some very weird requests around my business. They were an FFL holder. And for privacy, obviously reasons, I'm not going to put it up on screen. But essentially what we're dealing with here is UPS is asking for a lot more in-depth details around FFL licenses, around jump through this hoop, jump through that hoop. And it kind of sets some alarm bells off. Well, me and Curtis had a conversation around that, and we were kind of like thinking it was maybe a one-off. Well, until Curtis got his copy, and that is what we're going to talk about. So, Curtis, from kind of a high level, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about this, but then when you got your copy of the same letter?
So, as I alluded to in the video that I did, we talked about it for about 15 minutes and kind of the ins and outs of how FFLs operate and things like that, and what you can legally do with your FFL. And basically we came to the conclusion that it wasn't really that big of a deal because, you know, it's a business to business thing. UPS can pretty much do whatever they want, which is true. But after I got mine, I think I started digging into it a little bit farther than the surface level of like, yeah, well, UPS is just writing some new rules. And I think it's a little more serious than that.
Yeah, and that's something that we've seen across the board, kind of alluding to that same direction, right? We had UPS threatening the fact that they aren't going to ship specific products that are aligned to the 2A, right? They're not going to do certain things. Shipment might be just missing, you know, if it's the ghost gun or whatever it would be. Does that curtail in with, or does that fit into the ATF's new definitions? There's a lot of stuff up there we covered on our channel a lot. But when you start getting into different shipping companies doing the same thing, because we're going to hit on that later, because it's not just UPS. They're just the ones that sent the letters out. So you're starting to see a pattern of adjustment of behavior from these shippers. And that's where it kind of comes down, because if this is something where it's like, oh, they're just a private entity and they're taking care of themselves, yeah, that's fine. We get it. Like you even alluded to, it makes sense to take care of yourself. However, when you start to see it across the entire industry, you got to take notice. We got to dive into a little bit further. And so that's kind of what we're going to hit on. So from your perspective, Curtis, how does this affect you individually? Because you are an FFL, you have lots of different access to these things that are a little deeper, and you alluded to in your own video, than the standard interaction of a customer in UPS. But like, what does this actually mean for you? Like, what's it going to do, and what would it actually impact?
So just to give them a real quick walkthrough of the process thus far, I actually did get my contract last night. If anybody saw my video, then this is news.
And that video will be linked as well.
It took 2 weeks. So essentially they said that the account was inactive, but I have shipped stuff. So what I believe on the outset is that this policy is not currently live. I think it says it's live on their website. Like if you go to their website and look at it, it says, we don't do this stuff. Right. We don't do this stuff, and we haven't done this stuff. And it's like, that's not accurate. I think what they're doing is posturing, virtue signaling, with the intent to roll this policy out and get it active as things come online. But to give people an idea of this process, they basically send you a letter and they say, hey, contact us at this email address. You contact them at the email address. They want a whole bunch of information about your account to make sure that you're an authorized user on the account. And then they want you to fill out all the stuff that you do in a spreadsheet with your account. And then after you've given them that information, they then generate a contract for you that says, and I just read it last night, you have one account for shipping firearms. So anything that is a firearm. You have a second account that is anything that is firearms parts. And then a third account for anything that's like, oh, I bought something off of Amazon, right? So now as a business, you have to at least operate 2 different accounts. So if it's not a firearms part, though, say I just wanted to sell a shirt, then presumably I'd have to use the third account to be able to do that. So now what they've done is they've complicated the situation for a company that already can't fulfill their orders on time.
Right. So it has an element, and kind of like, we just look, when you back out a little bit, it kind of has that element of further segregation of specific accounts for what purpose. And that kind of gets into the next level. It's like, well, if you're going to be shipping these things anyway, and the whole point is you deliver them on time, and that's your focus, then why are you dividing them up into 3 separate categories, which could ostensibly be separated out easily? It's essentially like you're separating the wheat from the chaff if you were to take a targeted action.
Do you want to know? Do you want to take a step further on that? Because there are some things detailed in the contract that some other people have touched on previously. Though one of note is Eric over at Rock Veteran 88 did a video on this. The reason they want those different business activities separated is so that at any point in time they can say, hey, we want access to your books, right? We want to see the commercial activity that you've engaged in with your records. Now, this gets into a little bit of a sticky situation because you don't have to give it to them. Even though you signed the contract, you would be in breach of their contract having done that. But I had a situation some months ago where I had somebody else, actually a law enforcement agency, that was trying to procure my records for some other unrelated purpose. So I contacted the ATF, and I'm like, these people want my records, and I don't think I have to give them to them. And I actually took the time before the show to pull up the email from my guy, and he says that, and this is a quote, basically, your records are yours. The only time you have to disclose anything to anyone would be 1, under lawful warrant, 2, to respond to an ATF trace, or 3, during an ATF compliance inspection, and that's only once every 12 months. Other than that, unless you allow it, no one can access your records but you or anyone involved with the FFL. So UPS can request them, And you can be like,
right. So to kind of go down that road a little bit, that has a very common thread and common element of what we're seeing industry wide. Whether you go into the social media aspect, hey, you're not breaking the law, but you are breaking our policies. You go into the shipping departments, like, well, yeah, the ATF says you don't have to engage or even disclose anything that we're requesting, but if you don't, you're in violation of our processes. Account shut down. So that's kind of the plan, it seems like.
Well, they've also gone further to say that when you submit a shipment to them that contains a firearm, you have to supply them with an electronic manifest to a system that doesn't exist yet. Just throwing that out there. And also you have to supply a cover sheet. So you have to supply them with a, hey, here's what I shipped. You know, so not only just the label, but you also have to supply them with a shipping manifest paper-wise to be able to say, hey, this is the thing. And I haven't read the whole policy yet to see, because there's like, you have to provide this document, and then it gives you like what the document has to contain in a separate document. So I was reading this last night and I didn't get fully into it, but I'm assuming it's going to contain all the things that businesses that work in firearms are not going to want to stamp on the front of a fucking box. Sorry.
No, that's okay, because the bleep thing works just as well for Jared as it does for you. We're all good. This is great. So kind of extrapolating that out a little bit further, right? And as we're kind of putting this whole table together, and you see the entire thing when you back out, what do you think this has the end result of the impact on the end user? What's the industry wide? Like from a perspective of, in your own video, you were hitting on the fact that anytime that you want to transfer something, anytime that you're going to want to do anything, you're essentially going to have to transfer it into an FFL and transfer it out. I believe in your video, you said because of UPS standards of shipping specifically. So, I mean, a little bit of that. Clarify my point there. And then also, where do you think this is going on the end result?
So to clarify, currently the way that it works is if you buy something and it breaks, you've got a pistol and you've got something of the slide cracks, all right? Something that you can't fix yourself, where it has to go back. Well, I guess technically they could send you a new slide.
Something, the frame scenario.
The frame cracks, all right? You have to send it back to the manufacturer because they have to fix it. Normally the way that works is you contact them. They give you an RMA. You put that in the box. You take the label, you put it on the box, and you take it to UPS or FedEx, and you ship it off, right? After they complete their repair, if they need to charge you for it, they charge you for it. But if not, then they just ship it right back to your door because you've already undergone your background check. You've already filled out your 4473. It is lawful for the manufacturer to return it to the end user if it's returned on on a repair basis. Correct. So this is, for instance, really important for people who do stuff NFA related. If you blow up your can and it needs to be replaced by the silencer manufacturer, well, a 4473 is one thing. Going through another Form 4 is another. So like that becomes a problem. So that's the way it currently operates. And I got many people in my video say, hey, this is still working. So that leads me to believe that this, again, policy is not currently active, but with the intent being that what the contract says is that I, a federal firearms licensee, will not ship an item that is a firearm or firearms part, a firearm. You can technically ship firearms parts to end users, but you're not allowed to send firearms to anyone that does not hold an FFL license and has an identified UPS account as an FFL holder. So what that means ultimately is that process gets broken.
And right. It's no longer a simplified process. It is now a completely siloed process.
Yes. So now, as the end user who has a gun that's broken, conceivably, after this is fully active, you will no longer be able to send your firearm directly to the manufacturer because you won't be able to generate a shipping label. Maybe the manufacturer will be able to generate a shipping label for you that might be a way to get around that. But ultimately, they're not going to be able to, under UPS policy, send your firearm directly back to you. They're going to have to send it only to an FFL holder. And if you look at how this works, if you've used any of the automated systems, there are drop-down menus that you have to work within. And it would be very easy for them to lock that out. And if the identifying information for an FFL holder is not in their system. So it's because I've seen people say, oh, well, the manufacturer should just not do it that way. It will be electronically locked more than most likely. They won't be able to circumvent the system.
Right. So, I mean, essentially, at the end of the day, the way that this looks now is, again, potentially what it seems like the framework is being structured. UPS is essentially behaving no longer as a shipper, but as an FFL transferee. That's essentially what that transition is shaking out to be. Right. So UPS, prior to this, they would say, okay, FFL is going to FFL. This is a deal between the FFLs. The UPS is just the shipper. They're just the guy taking A to B. Well, now there's an extra step where UPS is trying to identify the beginning FFL and the end FFL to make an FFL, essentially an FFL transfer. They're becoming part of the chain of custody, essentially.
Yes, in a more official capacity, I would say.
Correct.
I think that they've actually stuck their finger in it farther than they realize, because now by doing this, now they're liable. They say it all over. They say it all over their contract that we indemnify them, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't gonna hold up.
Not at all, especially if you're looking at existing ATF regulations, existing shipping regulations, all the legislation that's in place. Man, it's not long until they get their own little letters from the Democrat senators signing and saying.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if UPS establishments have to start carrying federal firearms licenses.
Right, and that's kind of where I was going next. So the quagmire that gun controllers will typically jump into by, like you said earlier, virtue signaling or just appearing to do the thing that the public wants in their perception. You're talking about stepping into an FFL licensee. Are they going to do transfers now? Are they like, is this a new line of business? Are they now officially a gun dealer? Because in order to have an FFL active, I'm pretty sure, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to have actually merchandise flowing. You can't just have it and not use it.
Technically, it has to be, you have to show that it's a profitable business. So, like you can't just do free transfers for your friends, for instance. Like I hold an FFL and I can't just, like, I still have to charge my friends when the majority of the work that I do with my FFL are receiving demo guns and things like that for evaluation and photography,
amazing
and video
videos.
and all.
Amazing video and amazing videos.
Thank you.
High level.
That's what I tell them anyway. So yes, for the majority of the purpose of having that is to make that a more seamless process. And when I did my initial site interview with the ATF, they have to come out and inspect the place and all that sort of stuff. They're like, yeah, it's a good thing that you guys that are doing this work on the internet are getting your licenses, as far as like not only a level of transparency, so we don't have to worry about work this, because there's always that like DT scenario, right? That they can see it. The other side of it is that it just makes the business flow so much easier. So before I would have to get a demo gun in, I'd have to send it to an FFL. I'd have to go get it and fill out a 4473, all that sort of stuff. Now it just shows up and goes in my books, right?
Right,
and then
because
when
you're
it's
the
done,
actual FFL holder.
Yeah, and then when it's done, it can go right back. So it's a much more seamless process.
So at the end of the day, really at the end of the day, you've got one of two things: unintended consequences. You're going to have more FFLs started across the country, or you're going to have more cost delivered to the end user going to different FFLs in their hometowns or wherever they are.
Yes. So ultimately, what this does from the business perspective is it complicates the process for the FFL holder. But I think ultimately it's going to increase transfers to some degree, because they're going to have to, if they have to ship it to an FFL, then you're going to have to go do another 4473. And conceivably, at least from my perspective, as a business owner, time is money.
Correct.
If I have to spend time waiting around for you to show up and get your thing and do your background check again, I'm gonna have to charge you for that time, right?
Like, well, not only that, I mean, imagine the overall intended consequences again towards the NICS background check system. Now, I mean, if you increase by 20%, that's going to correlate across the board.
The system already does not run.
Right, exactly.
The system does already not run, and it's already stressed as it is. You can see it particularly on days like Black Friday and those very heavy commerce days. I tell people, don't even show up. Like if somebody's got something that they want to transfer, I just tell them no. Like, come on every day.
Well, because the system is overloaded, and that kind of goes back to that wait time. That goes back to the more FFLs. This seemingly innocuous action, which has kind of gone under the radar. Even you and I originally, we were kind of like, I mean, I get it, but like, what's the deal? It has tremendous, far-reaching implications the further you go down this rabbit hole for everybody, not just businesses, but also individuals.
I think that there's two likely scenarios here. Either UPS is virtue signaling. They're posturing, you know, like, hey, look at the thing that we did. Either, again, two categories, this, and in that I would also include CYA, right?
100%. Yeah.
So that the government doesn't say, hey, you're complicit in this, you know, that sort of thing. So those three in one. And then the other one is the other side of the coin would be that they are being compelled to do this already by an administration that is clearly out of touch. And
I would agree,
because I think that they've gotten so many L's handed to them in the last year. They're seeing that they've really reached the point where there's very little that they can do and not get called to the mat on it. Using a third-party private entity to do that while being the definition of fascism actually gives them the capacity to lean on a company to do things that they otherwise would not be able to do. There is no way that the United States government could write a contract that I just had to sign with UPS. There's no way that could happen.
No, right. It's got to be done through private entities, which is what we're seeing across the board. And in fact, one of the things that we cover on my channel, and you and I have talked about it a couple of times, the heavy leaning into the executive branch and the bureaucracies, because legislatively they've been stuffed hard. The judicial system is handing them L's, to your point, all over the place. The only thing that they have to rally and curry any type of favor with their really constituents, the only ones that are left, the true believers, is to abuse the executive branch through the bureaucracies because they can do it. You know, Obama famously said, I have a pen and I have a phone. Yeah, well, you don't have the votes, but yeah, I have the pen and the phone, right? So that's an argument for another day, but this is an interesting piece of the puzzle, my man, and I thank you for shining some light on it.
Okay. Another thing to add on to this is that some people would say, all right, dude, well, whoop-de-doo, you can't use your UPS is bad. Okay, so go to FedEx. Well, it turns out that if you look at FedEx, it's almost a carbon copy of the same policy. Now, I don't have a FedEx account, but I'm assuming that it's at approximately the same state because I still receive stuff from from FedEx. I just received something today from FedEx, and I don't even have an account with them. So I'm assuming that this is, again, another virtue signal or an intent to move the policy that direction that's just not currently active. And the reason that this is important is because with those two out of the game, the only recourse that you have as a citizen to be able to ship anything anywhere that is firearms related is USPS. And we know that USPS steals crap all the time, right? I've probably lost thousands upon thousands of dollars of product in USPS. The other problem with USPS, and this is the thing that I think this whole thing is going to hinge on, whether somebody decides to initiate some lawsuits or not, is that you, the citizen, cannot currently ship a handgun in the United States Postal Service. So you have zero recourse to send your handgun anywhere, even with USPS. So you can't, because in the past it was USPS isn't taking them, so just send it FedEx or UPS. Well, now you can't do that. So I want to see where this goes as far as the legal system is concerned and where people take it, because we've now created a quagmire, if you will.
Yeah, it's a quagmire of unintended consequences, which is what happens anytime that the government gets involved in something like, anything, mail, healthcare, you name your thing. But that is for another conversation. my buddy, my pal, my friend Curtis from VSO Gun Channel, thank you so much for stopping in, kind of shedding some light from behind the scenes, buddy. And I hope to do this again with you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks everybody for watching. Hopefully we'll see you on a future video here and over at my place. So
definitely over there, VSO Gun Channel.
See you guys.